Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This class is part of our American Whiskey Steward certification that we are doing, partnered with Woodford Reserve, and specifically today, with Brown-Forman, and specifically today, Woodford Reserve, and Moonshine U. So just a little bit about this program. Over the course of the next 5 weeks, we have 50 bar professionals, 3 of which are joining us today, that will be watching these lessons every Wednesday with folks from Brown-Forman. So today we're joined by Elizabeth McCall. We'll also be joined by Jackie Zykan, who is Master Taster for Old Forester, and then Chris Fletcher, who is the Master Distiller for Jack Daniels. So that's just a little bit about our Wednesday classes. And then on Thursdays, they're going to be joined in a private virtual classroom with Colin Blake of Moonshine U. And that's where they're going to really go like in-depth, hands-on with all of the American whiskey education. So for you all, you get to enjoy these Wednesday classes. And then for our stewards, they have their little private lessons on Thursdays. And then they're always tasked with a quiz that they turn in on Sundays. And at the very end of the program, they have a final presentation and a big final exam. And if they pass, they're awarded their Executive American Whiskey Steward certification. We did this last year, and it was a huge success, and we really enjoyed it. So we decided to do it again. And today we're kicking off the classes with Elizabeth McCall, Assistant Master Distiller for Woodford Reserve. She is going to be doing her famous flavor wheel class. Flavor wheel, I never leave home without one of these. So our whiskey stewards were sent a little tasting kit that included some dark chocolate, some dried cranberries, some sorghum, some roasted hazelnuts, and they were tasked with finding their own orange. And then they were also given a gift card that they used to purchase their own bottle of Woodford Reserve, along with some other Brown-Forman products. So today we're going to be going through Elizabeth's class with 3 of our stewards. They are Shelby Minnix of Detroit, Britt Clark of Charlotte, and Xander Aklilu of Denver. So thank you guys for joining us today and for being part of this program. 3 people that I absolutely adore and cannot wait to do this whole thing with. So Elizabeth, why don't you take us away and talk to us a little bit about some Woodford?
Awesome. So hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in on this class. I am here live from my home. So you hear my dog barking or my child crying. It's just day in the life of a virtual world. But I'm so excited to do this flavor wheel with you all because it really is such a fun exercise to learn how to explore the over 200 flavors in a glass of Woodford Reserve. Now, before we get to tasting, because I know I'm ready to taste, it's 2 o'clock, I'm ready to get going. But first, we need to talk about Woodford Reserve and how did we create this product? How did we get 200 flavor notes into this glass? And I have my fancy glass here for tasting. But the way that we do that is first, let's talk about our location. So Woodford Reserve, which the brand didn't start until 1996, but distilling had been happening on the site in Versailles since 1812. And that's with the Pepper family. And the reason why the Pepper family went there is because of the water. So you go to Woodford County, you drive through some of the most iconic and beautiful horse farms in the industry. And the reason why those horse farms are there and the distilleries are there is because of the limestone filtered water. So this water has a lot of calcium, magnesium, potassium in it. So all these rich minerals, which give us wonderful floral notes in our whiskey. It's also iron free. So you're not going to have some of the off notes or off coloring that iron can cause in your bourbon. So that's a really, really important piece of the puzzle. The other piece is that we have the grain recipe. So our grain recipe for today's bourbon tasting, we have 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. So that 72% corn gives us the sweetness. 18% rye really gives us the nice spice character that you'll find in Woodford Reserve. And then we have the 10% malted barley, which gives us nutty notes, but then it's also where we're getting 100% of our natural enzymes to convert those starches into sugars. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle for Woodford. And I really do like to emphasize that piece because we try to do everything as close to how they would have done it back in the turn of the century when this distillery first started operating. So that's really an important component. Then we have fermentation, and we are fortunate at Woodford Reserve to have our own proprietary yeast strain, which means we're not purchasing yeast from somebody, a supplier that would have provided yeast for another distilling company. So this means that we are creating unique fruit notes that only you'll find in Woodford Reserve. And our yeast strain is also conditioned to go 5 to 7 days during fermentation, as opposed to the industry standard of 3 days. So most are going 3 days. We're going 5 to 7 to really bring out those beautiful fruit notes. And I'm talking citrus, which we're going to taste today, cooked peach, banana, even some apple character. There's just a lot of fruitiness going on in our fermenters with our proprietary yeast. From there, then we will triple pot distill our whiskey at the Woodford Reserve Distillery. So the triple pot distillation is what allows us to really craft flavor. So you start with the fermented mash, and we're just separating out the good from the alcohol from all the mash. And then we will start to do a distillation of cutting off the tails in the second pot still. And then the third pot still is where we're going to distill the spirit and our spirit still. And we're going to cut off the heads and the tails. And we're going to keep the center cut, the heart of the run. And that is how we kind of craft flavor. From there, we go into our couture barrels, which I use couture because we're not buying them from somebody else and saying, give us your number 2 or your level 3 char. We are making these barrels at our own cooperage, making them to spec for Woodford Reserve. So we're seasoning the wood for 9 months, so we can dial that up, dial it down if we need to or want to shift the flavor at all. So 9 months seasoning. We toast our barrels separately from charring. So there's a toasting tunnel. It's just a hot tunnel that we let our barrels run through, and it really gets into the deeper layers of the wood, the lignin layer of the wood. So we'll toast for 10 minutes and just simply heat up the wood. From there, it goes into our char tunnel, and we're going to go char for 25 seconds. And that allows us to really caramelize the wood sugars, get a nice red layer, beautiful color. And of course, to be a bourbon, you have to be a new charred oak barrel. So we're entering into this barrel that is a couture barrel. From there, we'll age anywhere from 5+ years. So we don't ever put an age statement on our Woodford Reserve bottle. We're all about just what is the flavor profile? Are we meeting the right maturation flavor profile for Woodford? And that standard is set by myself and Chris Morris, and every batch of Woodford Reserve is compared to this gold standard. So it's just make sure that we're ensuring quality and consistency in our beautiful product. So now let's see, I'm ready to get to tasting. So we've got our over 200 flavors that we create through this process. So every batch of Woodford Reserve goes through this process, no matter what type of whiskey it is. And we're creating over 200 flavors that are balanced and complex. So you can see this flavor wheel that's next to me, and there's 5 areas of flavor on it. Bourbon whiskey has 5 areas of flavor. That is the grain, there's sweet aromatics, spice, fruit and floral, and of course, wood notes. So these 5 areas, if you look at this flavor wheel, they're each in equal parts. So they're all there represented in perfect balance. And a lot of times I think of our Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon as a diamond. You know it's a diamond. It's clear, but then when the light hits it, you'll get yellow, you'll get green, you'll get red, you'll get blue, you'll get purple, pink, whatever the color may be. And it's sort of like when I'm drinking a glass of Woodford Reserve, sometimes depending on the season, the day, the time of day, what I've eaten, I may get cinnamon, I may get apple, I may get rose petal, I might get toasted oak, or maybe it's vanilla or caramel. It just all depends. But the thing is that it always is there in perfect balance. And then all of a sudden, after the cinnamon, I might get the vanilla and vice versa. And it all just kind of plays nicely. And I don't like to tell you what you're going to get in a glass of Woodford, because tasting is so personal, and it's all about your personal experiences with different things. If you live in a different part of the world where you don't eat marzipan on a regular basis, or you don't have sorghum. I mean, a lot of people haven't had sorghum before and wouldn't know what I'm talking about. I have sorghum. I have a jar here because in Kentucky, sorghum's kind of something that we have on a regular basis. We put it on biscuits. But So if you don't get sorghum notes, it's okay. It's not, you don't have to get those specific things. It's all about just getting those areas of flavor. So when Chris Morris and I talk to you about flavor, I don't want to throw out very specific notes and then you'll feel like I failed because I didn't get them. No, it's all about just educating your palate and doing a training like this flavor wheel training. Now, in order to start this training, I always encourage everybody to grab their glass of Woodford Reserve. And so this is my fancy one. It's actually left over from when we were developing the official bourbon glass. You know, there's a Glencairn glass out there that's officially for Scotch. We did come out with a bourbon glass, so that's kind of fun. And this was part of the development process. It is not stemless. The final product is not does not have a stem. It's stemless. So let's start by wafting this glass under our nose. And I just go back and forth, and man, I'm getting a little bit of light citrus, but some vanilla. And you can even see a little bit of rose petal in there. And I think that the rose petal is something that's taken me a while to get used to, but I've had fresh flowers in the kitchen lately, and I walk by and I'm like, it just, that recurring sensory input of the rose petal helps build that memory pathway for me. So it's becoming a lot more prevalent. Let's go ahead and stick our nose deeper into the glass and take a nice deep breath in. And when you do that, you'll see that the richness develops. You start to see brown sugar and the cinnamon spice clove, a little hint of cedar wood starts to develop too. And mint, I'm starting to get some mint too. Now go ahead and swirl your glass. And when you swirl it, you really get the whiskey excited and it wakens it. And this is why you don't start a high proof spirits tasting by swirling your glass, because let's go ahead and nose. And now I get a lot of pepper, a lot of, you know, just spice character. I'm getting mint, peppermint. I mean, even some leathery notes and the cedar wood, but I've lost all those soft, sweet aromatic notes. So this is kind of one of those things where a good lesson, don't start by swirling your glass. Do that well after you've kind of dissected your glass. Now let's go ahead and take our first sip. 90.4 proof. We're just going to warm up our palates. It's almost 2:15 and I haven't had a sip of whiskey yet today, which is unusual. So let's go ahead and warm up our palate. And I mean, at 90.4 proof, it really goes down smoothly. It's not too unapproachable or anything like that. Now I want you to go ahead and take a second sip and just think about the flavor on your palate. So is it sweet? Is it spicy? Is there any kind of bitterness going on? And really, I mean, I just get that there's a little bit of that toasted nut character and some sweetness, a little bit of baking spice, but nothing too overwhelming in any direction, which makes Woodford so approachable. Third sip, we're just looking at the finish. How does it feel going down on your throat? Close your mouth, breathe out your nose. Those are the aromatics. And this is what, whenever I'm putting batches together for customers or a project that I'm working on, I like to always confirm my batch with the aromatics. So close my mouth, breathe out my nose, see, is it a long finish? How does it feel? Does it leave me wanting to come back for more?
And just to note, if you have any questions for Elizabeth or you have any like tasting notes that you want to share with her, feel free to drop those in the Facebook comments. We're getting those in real time. So any questions that you have, Elizabeth is happy to answer.
Yes. So now that we've kind of grounded our palates, let's see how these food items impact the way the whiskey tastes. Because that's what's really fun about this exercise is that we're not going to change what's in this glass. All we're going to do is introduce different food items and see how they play with your palate in the whiskey and influence the flavor. The first item we always start with is the cheese. And I have a funny story about my mother-in-law. She is a diehard Chardonnay drinker. And I tell this story every time I do this tasting because it's just, she's one of my favorite people. And it just was such a moment with her because she's a Chardonnay fan. Her dogs' names are Kendall and Jackson. So she's the best. And she loves her Kendall Jackson. And I do too, but so this is a fun tasting. So when you have the cheese, she had the cheese and then you pair it with the bourbon and with Woodford. And she was like, taking more sips of other people's. She was taking my father-in-law's, and I was so blown away. And I'm like, this is proof that even if you're not a high proof spirits drinker on the regular, a well-aged cheese like Parmesan or Reggiano, or even an aged cheddar cheese, it really does shift the way that the spirits taste on your palate, and it actually blocks the ethanol. So that's what's really fun. So let's take a bite of this cheese, let it coat your palate. The fattiness of the cheese is going to actually create a nice layer, and it's going to allow you to just experience flavor. Plus, I just love cheese, and so anytime I have an excuse to eat some cheese and drink some whiskey, I'm all about it. And for me, it really gets kind of nutty and creamy. And so I get some of those, maybe a little pecan character, but the creaminess, saltiness, and just some of those fruit. I get a little pineapple, toasted coconut. It's just kind of an interesting pairing to do. And it does soften that. So I hope that the one takeaway with this is that think about the impact of the ethanol, and did it shift between before having the cheese and after having the cheese? And that's the biggest takeaway with the cheese. The next food item that I want everybody to try is the dried cranberry, or craisin. And some people, what's funny is Weta, so Chef Weta Michael, she was the chef who worked with Chris Morris on putting this flavor wheel together. You know, they all sat, Chris and Weta drank Woodford Reserve and walked around a room full of different food items. I've been told about this. Wasn't there to experience it, but she always tells this funny story about when they were developing this, that they landed on the craisin, and she says, this is the best day of this craisin's life, because craisins are used in a lot of things. But to be able to be paired with Woodford Reserve is quite a good day for a craisin. So let's go ahead and take just chew up your craisin. I wouldn't say take a bite of it. Just eat the whole craisin, let it coat your palate, and then take a sip of your Woodford.
I'm keeping an eye on the live conversation, and they're loving the cheese. Loving the cheese pairing.
I mean, cheese is such a great, it's such a good pairing because I love cheese, and I know that I'm supposed to be technically cutting back on my dairy for whatever, and I just am like, okay, I'm gonna cut back. But
what's not to love about cheese?
I have a question. Other than Parmesan, what other cheeses do you like to pair with whiskey?
Honestly, it's any that are highly an aged hard cheese. So I don't like really stinky ones, but maybe that's just a personal preference. And some of the soft cheeses, maybe not so much, but you could probably do a cooked brie. And we actually have a Woodford baked brie. And then there's kind of a chutney sort of that goes on top of it that we use Woodford in. That's a great kind of dish where you're actually cooking with Woodford. So I'm really, for the purpose of getting the fat and the shift of flavor, any of them. Cool. Cheese. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. That was really cool.
You're welcome. Good. I'm glad you all liked it, because I love that story about my mother-in-law, because she's so fun. And it was so awesome that day that she was eating the cheese and drinking the bourbon. And I'm like, this is proof that this is a way everybody can get involved. And that's what's fun about this tasting, is that it really invites people in, takes down the intimidation factor of consuming bourbon. And because sometimes it can be intimidating, especially in today's world of there's so many serious bourbon people out there. And I just think bourbon's supposed to be fun, y'all. It's not supposed to be super pretentious. So it's a great way to do it.
This is a great, introductory course for a new bourbon drinker. Xander or Britt, do you have any cheese or craisin comments?
I, for one, love cheese, and I feel you, Elizabeth, because I don't eat as much dairy. I'm like, it's so hard. And I'll hear thinking in my head is is that baked brie distillery release only? Because I need some in my life, yesterday.
I know.
I think it's on Pinterest. It's on Pinterest. Look, yeah.
Yeah, I had some aged Gouda yesterday, and I feel like that would go so well with this bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
Be bomb.
See, we could do a full cheese flavor wheel and just work all the way around the different types of cheeses and how do they impact Woodford. So there's sky's the limit with this pairing. And but with the cranberry, we didn't talk about flavor, but cranberry, so obviously you get dried cranberry. I mean, that's like duh, because we just we introduced that to our palate. But then I also go to like strawberry jam and raspberry, blueberry. I mean, all those berry notes, raisin even, or fig, that sort of thing. Like it just kind of blooms on your palate and you start to see all those different flavors. And we do a cocktail. And actually I was doing a class with Germany, a German American whiskey conference just on Monday. And one of the bartenders was saying, if I go to a bad bar where I don't think they can make a proper cocktail, I always do Woodford and cranberry juice because it's just such a perfect pairing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've never really done just Woodford and cranberry. And so I'm going to have to try that. I mean, I have cranberry juice all the time and or have it at home. And so I was like, I'm going to try that out. But it is a great vehicle for experiencing different berry notes in Woodford Reserve. Okay. So now that we've done that, we just went from the cheese, we did the dried cherry or cranberry, I'm sorry. And then let's do the nuttiness. Let's do the toasted hazelnut. So go ahead and chew this and just let this kind of marinate on your palate, because you're going to see how with a toasted hazelnut, all these oils and all this wonderful goodness kind of comes out and it floods your whole olfactory system. So you're going to see that it goes up your nose and coats your palate. And so toasting is really important. If you're going to do this exercise, it doesn't matter. You can use almonds, you can use pecan, walnuts, really any kind of nut that's been roasted, peanuts even, as long as they've been roasted, because it's just like with the barrel. We toast them, so that roast, so that it opens them up and brings out the character. So now while you've got that on your palate, take a small sip of your Woodford. And this one, I mean, I think I always get peanut butter. My palate goes to peanut butter because I'm like a peanut butter junkie. I was thinking, like with my daughter, she's going to be 9 months old, and we were so worried, like, what if she had a peanut allergy? What would we do? Because I live off of peanut butter. She doesn't, luckily. But peanut butter is one, because the sweetness of the Woodford and then obviously the nutty notes of the toasted hazelnut give you that peanut butter character. But I think of Nutella, obviously, because Nutella is made with hazelnuts. But I go to the pecans, like candied pecan. Even some of those tea notes really come through nicely with this pairing.
We have a question about the cranberry. So would you stick with the 2 high acidity fruits?
For this pairing, this food pairing?
Right.
Really for this food pairing, it was the dried dark. So you could do, I would stick with dried fruits, and so you could go with raisin. And the reason for that is that it's been aged and dehydrated. So it's a concentration of flavor, and it's sort of like what happens to our whiskey while it's maturing. It's a concentration of flavor in the barrel. And so that's really more, when you're doing this. But honestly, you can do any pair. I mean, I've gone down, so you could stick with the high acidity sort of fruit. That's fine. But I honestly don't want to say you have to stick with any one certain type of fruit. Like you can do, I was in Miami years ago, we did banana and pineapple because we wanted to kind of bring in the tropical flavors. I mean, mango would be phenomenal in this. Just do your homework and taste it first before you start tasting with other people. But it's a fun exercise, and it kind of just shows the versatility of Woodford Reserve and how it really pairs well with so many. I mean, I haven't found something yet that I just think was terrible, unless it was something like some sort of like broccoli dish or something. And I love broccoli, but I mean, there's just some things that are maybe not the best.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Any comments before we move on to the next one? And we're going to do the orange slice next. So if anybody has their orange, if it's the whole orange, make sure you make a little slice. I just did a slice, but you can do a slice and a peel because we're going to use both.
Any cranberry or roasted almond or roasted hazelnut? comments from our tasters?
Honestly, it makes me want to do like a peanut butter jelly sandwich, but also like infuse the jelly with like some whiskey and make it like upgraded. Something like that.
I love that idea.
I think we should. Maybe throw some brie in there,
Really, you could do a brie with a strawberry or like whatever jam infused with Woodford, like a little could be a perfect derby, a little derby appetizer, a little derby snack.
I would go apricot because I always get apricot when I think of like Woodford. It's the high ride and give it that dried apricot. I think that'd be dope.
That's
I think I know what I'm having for late lunch today, actually.
That's a really good idea, actually. And even to elevate your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Just I like that idea. Version. Yeah. I'm like already envisioning I could get the little like cut off the edges and they look like little tea sandwiches, but fancy.
I love that.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So many good ideas. So culinary Woodford's not only for drinking, you can use it in food. I cook with it all the time. So lots to do with it, and obviously in cocktails. Let's go to the orange slice now, because this is my personal favorite pairing. So I want you to just go ahead and eat the fleshy part, and then and take a sip of your Woodford, and we'll talk about that. It's so nice to eat like this on Facebook Live.
Right. Is this like what are those videos where you like just sit and watch each other eat?
Mukbang?
Yes, yeah.
This is what you discovered on TikTok.
It's one of my discoveries for sure. Yeah.
But I think that kids do that these days. They watch other kids play games.
Right.
Okay. So I've just eaten the fleshy part of my orange, and I've taken a sip of the Woodford, and that it's bright, it's crisp, it's like a grapefruit sort of sharpness to it. That acidity is really nice, gives good mouthfeel, and it pairs really well. You see lots of citrus, but now I think this is the magic. So go ahead and take the peel and express the orange oils onto your palate. And this is to what I always say, if you're at a bar sometime, this would be the greatest thing to just go into the bartenders, all their kind of garnishes, and grab the oranges and just start rubbing it on your teeth or whatever you have to do to get the orange oils on your palate. So people think you're weird, but then when you take a sip of your Woodford, you're going to see why it's like magic. So go ahead. Trust them.
And you're just getting the oils, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The actual juice. Perfect.
Yes. So you just want the oils. You're just expressing the orange oils. Trying not to get juice all over me too, but tastes like sunshine. That's right. Well, so, okay. Take a sip. And for me, it's an old fashioned built directly in your mouth. I mean, it really, really just highlights why garnish is so important. Garnish isn't just because it's pretty and looks good. It really elevates your drink. Even if you're having Woodford on the rocks, expressing orange oils onto the rim and then just rubbing it around the rim elevates your drink. It just brings out all these beautiful citrus notes.
I literally was thinking the same thing. After we did that, I was like, this is why I make so many Woodford Old Fashions. It goes so well together.
Yeah. I just think that, and not only do you get orange, but you get the lemon, you get lime, even it goes woody, and you get some kind of great rich spice flavors. So I just think it's such a fun pairing, and it shows the complete depth of Woodford. And it's not just only fresh, but you can go see how you can get candied sort of citrus notes. And we do a wonderful cocktail derby time, the Woodford Spire. It's one that it's going to outsell the mint julep as soon as we're all back to a normal derby. So like next year derby, I think is going to be derby on steroids, and I cannot wait for it. And I think that we're going to sell more Woodford Spires than we will mint juleps. And it's because it's so easy to drink. It is 1.5 ounces of Woodford Reserve, 2 ounces of lemonade, and 1 ounce cranberry juice. So we've just already proven citrus, lemon, that character is really good with Woodford Reserve. We've had the cranberry, we see the complexity, and you just pour that over ice. You can add a little lemon twist to it. And it just is such a great, easy to drink summer cocktail. And it's one that I'll do if we go on walks around the neighborhood. You know, I little bourbon lemonade is great to do, and it's just easy, it's refreshing, it's all the things, and it's very approachable. So I highly enjoy that, and it takes the ABV down a little bit, so it's not super boozy either, which is great for responsible consumption. Okay, we're gonna move on to the chocolate. So the chocolate is a very fun pairing because I think people automatically think it's gonna be super sweet aromatic, but the thing is it's surprising. And I want you all to taste first, and then we'll talk about why it's surprising. So take a small bite of your chocolate.
Elizabeth, do you have a preference on which one?
Go with the dark chocolate.
Gotcha.
And just let it coat your palate. Take a small sip, because I think we've had this wonderful bourbon that is so you don't see a lot of spice. You don't see a lot of like anything that's super sharp on your palate. And then when you introduce the dark chocolate, where we get some just the notes are, for me, roasted coffee, clove, cedar wood, there's leather, there's that tobacco. I mean, it just goes bold. And so basically what's happening is that we're getting the sweetness of the chocolate and the sweetness of the Woodford, and they're canceling each other out. And both chocolate is highly complex and Woodford's very complex. So when you cancel out the sweetness, you get to see the complexity of the spice character that's at play in this. So I'd love to hear what you all think, what you're getting.
I personally think it was great to follow up the chocolate with the orange, because I feel like the orange brought more of the oak out. I felt the chocolate is bringing more of the spice out, and I'm loving this kind of like roller coaster of how Woodford can change.
Yeah, and thank you. That's a great thing to highlight, is that, again, what I said in the beginning, we haven't done anything to change Woodford. All we've done is eaten different food items with it. And so that's what's really fun, is that it can be used in a cocktail, and it can play with, it's so diverse. I mean, you can build so many different cocktails off of this and really just can't go wrong. I mean, it's very versatile. It's very fun, and plays well with a lot of different food items. So I love the chocolate. Let's go ahead and have the sorghum. Oh, there's lots of cinnamon tobacco. Yeah, I mean, it's spice. But, you know, and as it sits, though, something I do think about, after it's left your palate, the sweet aromatics start to really come out after the chocolate's kind of faded a little bit, and just that, then you're like, oh, I get the vanilla and the caramel, and then those sweetness start to come through. So that's a roller coaster of flavor just in the chocolate. Now let's go ahead and do the sorghum. So for all of you who may not be born in Kentucky and have sorghum, and I wasn't even born in Kentucky, but I have grown up here, and sorghum is something we use a lot. We definitely use it a lot at the distillery when we're making different dishes, cocktails. We use it as a sweetener in our cocktails because it just has more complexity going on to it than just your white sugar. And it just, so we'll see. Let's just do the pairing, and then let's talk about why it's so awesome. So I've got my sorghum. It's grassy, it's earthy, it's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. I mean, it has those dark fruit notes. Chris Morris will often say that this is the lie detector, because it is so seamlessly paired with Woodford. It has so much complexity going on, and that when you pair it with Woodford, some people will go and say they get spice. Some people say they get sweet aromatics. Some get the fruit floral. Some get the wood. And so it's just very interesting. It kind of tells you, where does your palate tend to go? And so I just took my bite of my little taste of my sorghum. And for me, I mean, I get like right now I'm just going on that dry dark fruit pathway, but some people, I mean, I can see like some people will get caramel, it just kind of changes for everybody, but
I went like walnut. Yeah.
And it goes like nutty too. And so it's just such an interesting sweetener to play with. We do the $1,000 mint julep every year for the Kentucky Derby. And one year we did a double oaked with that was one we did. But then a few years ago the sweetener was sorghum. And it just really elevated and added some complexity to the mint julep, other than it just being your plain white sugar simple syrup. And it was tasty.
We have a couple of questions just about sorghum.
Yes.
One person said, New Yorker here, what is sorghum? And then someone asked, what's something that they can substitute?
Okay. Oh, good. Excellent question. So first of all, what is sorghum? So sorghum's, it's in the sugar cane family. It's a grass that grows here in Kentucky. And you grind it down and it becomes sort of like a molasses. It's in the molasses sort of family. So just so you can see here. So it's like molasses, but it's earthier and it cannot be solidified. So Chris Morris did try to dehydrate it once for Derby and turn it into basically like a dry powdered sort of sugar. And it cannot be, it stays in this liquid form. It reabsorbs the moisture from the air. So that was just a funny story that he told me once. So it's sort of like molasses, but that's the family that it's in, and it's a sweetener. And we typically use it most of the time in Kentucky. You'll see people putting it on their biscuits and using it maybe in tea or something as a sweetener. But it's just kind of it's a very Kentucky sort of thing. And then the other question: how do you substitute? Because obviously you can't get sorghum everywhere. I mean, you can't. I guess in today's world you can. You can order it on Amazon, I think, and Whole Foods has it. But easiest thing to do is to substitute. So you can do maple syrup. I've even done Mrs. Butterworth before because, I mean, that was what I had at home. And I was like, well, I'm going to try this out. And so that's always interesting. Honey is a good substitute as well. And you can do really any other kind of sweetener that you might typically have. And raw honey is great, especially if you're trying to keep it close to localize the flavor wheel and to hit on what you have in your area. And raw honey from a local farmer would be fun just because you're going to get the flora notes. And honey can be very, very floral, and sorghum can be floral too, but honey can go really floral, which is nice. And just a fun tasting to do.
And on that, I think horehound candy also tastes a lot like sorghum, like the old school, old fashioned candy.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
The horehound.
Yeah.
It reminds me of sorghum.
I think they're like molasses candies. Or something.
Yeah. So, and like you could use molasses. You have to be careful with molasses because I've gotten some that are a little too, have too much iron character, a little too metallic for my palate. So you just have to be careful with that. But yeah, I mean, anything. But honestly, it's like, what is your palate like? And use that. So these are all the different food items that are on the flavor wheel. But as I've mentioned, you can tailor this to meet whatever it is that you're doing. And you can do it so that it meets your your region. You can do a full chocolate flavor wheel. You could do different fruits. I mean, and I know you're going to be with Jackie later, and Jackie and I have jokingly said like we could do like a whole candy sort of food pairing because you can do a lot. And it's fun to pair food with whiskey as a way to educate your palate and to train yourself and just to expand your sensory library of different attributes that you can pick out in whiskey. I mean, this is how you do it. People ask all the time, how do you pick out flavor notes? How do you write those flavor notes? And it's by doing this. You simply pair food items with your whiskey and just build the vocabulary, build the library of attributes, and that's how it's done.
Awesome. Shelby, Xander, or Britt, do you have anything that you like, anything you favored or anything you like weren't too hyped on?
Yeah, I think my favorite one was definitely the the sorghum. I've just never tried it before. So trying it now for the first time, then pairing it with the whiskey, I thought I'd just get a lot of sweet aromatics, but it definitely pulled a lot of fruit for me. A lot of like candied fruit, even like candied like walnuts. It was really cool. And I'm probably going to put some on my pancakes. Thanks.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I still think my favorite. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You go.
I was gonna say my favorite is still the orange and the brie. I think top down, just because I feel like I brought the notes that I personally like when it comes to like Woodford. It's got like the higher rye content. I'm a rye girl, so those were my personal favorites. Brought out different notes.
I'm gonna agree with Britt. Like the cheese and the orange were definitely my favorite.
Good.
Yeah.
We got a comment about the way that the orange oil affected the texture as well. So I think there's more than just taste that goes into this. There's some like texture changes too. And then we have a question here. When we do these tastings, is there a reason for the order? And like, does the order affect the like next thing that you're going to taste?
So we don't have an official order. I mean, I think if you go to woodfordreserve.com, there definitely is here's the flavor wheel tasting, here's how you should do it. But I can tell you there have been numerous times where I've gone in the wrong order, and you're still going to get the same impact from the flavors. But to what Britt was saying, how it takes you on this sort of roller coaster ride, that's what I like to do, is try to sorry, my dog is barking at something. But what I like to do is go, like I went from the cheese, then to the cranberry, then you go to the nutty, then you go to the citrus, then you go to the chocolate. So kind of going back and forth between the different types and not always sticking to the same is, I think, good for your palate to try to just switch up and see these different kind of things going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments just about, like, someone said, I wonder how Woodford would taste with a spicy dark chocolate. So yeah, I think people are going to take this journey on their own as well.
Yeah, I encourage that, because we've done chocolates. Like my husband and I were hanging out. I got sent home with like a brick of different chocolates, and actually we're doing it with double oaked and chocolate. But you can use regular Woodford, and every chocolates that are either white chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and then chocolates that are infused with different things are all going to play differently with the Woodford. So I do encourage that. It's a fun thing to do, and who doesn't want to sit and drink and eat chocolate?
Oh my God, what a dream. Another question, do you separate the taste from the sensations like tannin and cool mint?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I do. If I'm sitting down and I'm going to critique a batch, like when we're doing personal selections or we're putting a batch together for somebody, I definitely will note. I always go through, okay, what's aroma, what aromatics are happening. I talk about the feeling on the palate. So is it astringent? Is it creamy? Is it like what's going on from a feeling standpoint? And then I'll think about flavor, because I do think that the mouthfeel is very important, and that's kind of what's the barrel bringing, and how are the tannins of the wood kind of playing in that batch. And so I do think that's really important to kind of call out, but it doesn't necessarily always get put into the final tasting notes. When you read those taste notes that Chris and I put on something, it doesn't always come through in that. So, but it's important from building a batch, I think, definitely.
That is all the questions that I have for right now. Do you all have any questions before we jump off? Feeling good?
I'm feeling great. I don't think I have any questions. I'm just ready to start doing this more, especially with my bar guests. I think someone in the comments said that, and I'm thinking, I think I need to bring some dark chocolate, espresso orange peel, when like my bar guests want to nerd out with me.
Right. Make those garnishes a little more edible. Take them on a full journey.
Functionality.
Right. Love that. Well, thank you all so much, Elizabeth, Xander, Shelby, Britt. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your feedback and all of your knowledge. So this is our first class of the American Whiskey Certification Spring Group. Next week, we do not have a public class, but the following week, we are going to be on with Chris Fletcher talking all about yeast, the science of yeast. And he has a really, really cool presentation that we've already seen with the last group, but he's ready to share it with everybody. So I cannot wait for that one. So in the meantime, we'll get back to all of our lessons with Colin and your quizzes and all of that fun stuff. And then we'll meet back here, like I said, not this Wednesday, but the following. So thank you all again. Really appreciate it. And we'll see
Thank you.
soon.